welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're continuing our series on which ratings matter and which traits matter at each position within Madden 24. And we're going to be covering the cornerback position today. We've already done safeties on defense. Now we're bouncing back to the defensive side of the ball with the other secondary position, which is your cornerbacks. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this is going to, again, depend on what exactly you're doing with these corners, whether you want to be a man-heavy or a zone-heavy defense, and whether a corner is going to be a number one, a number two, or a slot type of a corner. Those things are going to matter a little bit as far as which ratings you want to focus on, but on a general basis, what you want out of your corners is always going to be relatively the same. The first and most important thing that you want to have on your corners, on pretty much all of your defensive backs, on pretty much all of your skill positions, is going to be athleticism. And I know I've led off pretty much every video so far by stating that athleticism is key, but it is more key at this position than most others, because as a defensive back, you need to be able to make plays breaking on the football, and you need to be able to keep up with the players that you're matched up against, which is going to be some of the fastest players in the game out there at that receiver spot. Tariq Woolen is a very good example of this, with 98 speed, 97 acceleration in my franchise currently, and then a good handful of other ratings to boot. What I will say, however, is beyond a player's straight line speed and acceleration, the most important rating, and often overlooked for most cornerbacks, is going to be their agility and change of direction. This is where some of these players suffer, and this is another good example with Tariq Woolen, because he's got 98 speed, 97 acceleration, but he's only got 87 agility. Change of direction also does not show up on the player card for your cornerbacks, so you actually have to go over and scroll over, and he's only got 84 change of direction. So there's an argument to be made that Devin Witherspoon, as an example, is potentially a better just outright cornerback because he has significantly better agility and change of direction, meaning he's going to be able to break on the ball significantly easier than Tariq Woolen is. Tariq Woolen has that fantastic straight line speed, but he's going to struggle to change directions. He's going to struggle to break on the football, break on routes, and make the plays that you expect a defensive back to make. So you're trading off there a little bit with a guy like that, but this is the case for a lot of top-end corners in the NFL. In Madden, for example, Darius Slay, 92 speed, 92 acceleration right off the rip. You'd think he's a good corner, but he's only got 89 agility, 91 change of direction, not necessarily the best. And then Marlon Humphrey, 92, 94, but 87, 89. Trayvon Diggs, 93-92, but 87-87. Ideally, every single rating here would be above a 90. Jalen Ramsey, the perfect example of what you actually want out of your corners, as well as Jair Alexander. These guys have 92, 93 plus in all of these categories. Actually, Jair Alexander is probably the best example here on this first page because he's got fantastic agility and change of direction, meaning that I know I can rely on him to break on those routes, break on those footballs, and make plays. He might not be the fastest corner in the world, but he's going to be super agile and super capable of breaking to the football. One rating that I want to highlight here in with athleticism is going to be a player's jumping rating. You want to have 85 plus jumping. I've talked about this in other videos, but this is the threshold to trigger a lot of the animations in the game. Ideally, you're going to want to be above a 90 or a 95. Again, these things kind of go in groups of 5 like that. The thresholds kind of increase generally in Madden in groups of 5. You're not going to see a big difference between an 85 and an 87 jumping, but you are going to see a difference between an 85 and a 90, a 90 and a 95. So that 96 jumping is good. 95 would be pretty much just as good. And that's going to be really important for these players triggering the animations that you want them to trigger to go up for the football in order to do things without even having abilities on these players whatsoever. Then the next most important thing on a cornerback within Madden 24 is going to be the player's height. This is something that is very often overlooked, and this is another reason why Tariq Woolen is a fantastic example for a solid young corner within the game, because he is 6'4", 210 pounds. Every extra inch of height that you get is going to create a larger player model. Every extra inch of height that you get is going to give you longer arms at that position. So players that are taller are going to be more likely to break up passes just based on their player model size. When you think about a lot of the receivers in the NFL today, they're looking at 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", and so on in terms of height. The better you can match up against that at the cornerback position, the more success you're going to have. So if you can find a player like a Tariq Woolen that has good speed, hopefully has good agility and change of direction, but also has good size like this at 6'4", this is like crazy size for a cornerback. You don't get this too often. Normally you're really winning if you get a 6'1" corner, but if you can get anybody that's over 6 foot, you're going to be putting yourself at a better advantage with that position, because they're going to just have a bigger player model that's able to get to footballs that smaller player models aren't able to. And then next we have to talk about zone coverage. In my personal opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people on Madden 24, zone coverage is far better than man coverage this year, and it has been for quite a while actually, except for when there have been glitches with zone coverage and those types of things. Regardless though, zone coverage is pretty much what you want to focus on. If you get a good zone coverage corner, you can take the focus away from those players. You can know that they're going to be reliable, they're going to be where they need to be, and so zone coverage rating is going to be really useful to have on your cornerbacks. As you can see with Tariq Woolen here, he's got 71 man, 86 zone coverage, he's got a +1 to both of those, but ultimately he is more focused towards zone coverage, and you're going to see that with most of my corners in the game. I personally would always prefer to run a man coverage defense if man coverage actually worked the way that it was supposed to. Unfortunately, it really doesn't, and man coverage should be more effective in a lot of scenarios, but it's not. And so the majority of what you're going to see yourself running within the game is zone coverage. Cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 6, cover 9, and those types of things. You want your corners to be good at those. You want them to be in the right position and be able to make plays, and therefore focus on zone coverage before you focus on man coverage. Typically, you want a corner that has 80+ in both zone and man. So Tariq Woolen here is struggling a little bit in that man coverage category. He's not going to be effective pretty much at all if you put him in that, but hopefully his athleticism can make up for it. As far as the zone coverage though, I know that I can rely on him. Next up after that is simply going to be a player's play recognition and awareness. Those are going to affect how well the player is aware of what's going on in front of them, how well they're going to be able to read whether it's a run, a pass, what level the pass is going to, those types of things, where the threats are that are coming into their zones. So I recommend 80+ play recognition and awareness if you can get it on your cornerbacks. Tariq Woolen, again, another good example of this at 24 years old. He's going to fill out pretty much every requirement that I'm looking for at the cornerback position by the time that he's 25 years old, because he's already almost at 80 awareness, he's at 80 play rec, he's got 85+ zone coverage, he's really athletic. I just wish he had better agility and change of direction. One additional rating that I will point to here that can be helpful is a player's catching rating. That 80 catching for a corner is phenomenal. That is like one of the highest catching ratings for cornerbacks in the game. You don't often see them that high. Anything above a 70, 75 is going to be relatively effective for these cornerbacks, but you do want to focus on corners that can catch a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting interceptions at the rate that you might like. Beyond that, though, the ratings don't matter too much. I've noticed that press can have an effect, but how often are you actually pressing your corners? That's the first question you got to ask yourself. If you're pressing a lot, then yeah, you might want to focus on it a little bit more. I don't press them a whole lot because they have a tendency to get beat when they're in press anyway, unless they're really, really, really good at press coverage. Tackling's not going to matter a whole lot here. Really, their player size is going to matter more for their tackling than anything. Man coverage, like I said, we kind of shy away from that. And then block shedding, hit power, strength, those types of things, not going to factor into the equation too much. I mean, I do like to have a stronger corner. I do like to have a corner that can tackle and help in the run game, but it's really not that important for what you're asking these guys to do on a general basis. And finally, we have to look at the player's traits. There are a couple of traits that affect this position that are going to be useful or hurtful depending on what you have on that player. As far as player's traits are concerned, the penalty trait is going to be relatively important for this position, especially depending on what you're playing on in your franchise or whatever game mode you're playing. You don't want the undisciplined penalty trait because this is going to result in a lot of pass interference calls, maybe even some face masks and things like that when they come in for tackles. So ideally, you want the disciplined or the normal trait here. Unfortunately, Tariq Woolen has undisciplined, and there's no way to change that other than being a commissioner and going in and editing it. The other thing that you're going to want to take a look at is the play ball in the air trait. I typically like defensive backs that have the aggressive trait here, because that means that they're going to break for the football. They're going to try to attack the football as opposed to sitting back. And when you have the balance trait, that might be better for some people, some users within franchise, but it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. Sometimes when you want them to attack, they're not going to, and sometimes when you want them to sit and not attack the ball, they're going to attack the ball. So it's not as predictable as you would like. You definitely do not want the conservative trait at cornerback, because you want these guys getting in there and making plays. And if they have that conservative trait, they're going to sit there and they're going to let receivers catch over top of them a lot, way more often than you're going to want. Other things that are helpful to have on these players: the high motor trait, that's helpful to have on anybody. And then the strips ball trait is something that's going to be relatively important for defensive backs in general. If you can get a lot of players that are good at stripping the football, that can be helpful for creating turnovers. Not the end of the world, not the end all be all though. Focus more so on their plays ball tendency and their penalty tendency, because those are going to be the most impactful. With that being said, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. I know I've been a little bit slow with getting the videos out lately, but I do plan to continue to make them. I've just been very busy with football season and coaching. So as always, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good one.